When talking about the major arcana and their iconography and meaning in divination and Jungian interpretation, it makes sense to mention the Fool Arcana first, since it is by far the most basic card in the deck, its original purpose as a playing card being very distinct from all other cards. The Fool Arcana is the sole unnumbered card among the 22 tarot trumps, albeit some decks number the card as 0. Some Belgian and Austrian decks also number the card as 22. This is reflected by the hairbands of the female protagonist in Persona 3 Portable, shaping a Roman numeral 22. A common interpretation of the card's variable placement is that the Tarot Arcana, in their representation of the human journey of constant change and individuation, actually form a circle, a story that keeps repeating in different forms endlessly over and over, with the Fool acting as both the beginning and the ending. Wade, who influenced the widely known and used Waiter-Waiter deck, argued that the Fool may even belong between Judgment and the World, symbolizing a failure of the human journey, an alternate bad end to the fulfillment given by the World Arcana, if you so will. Now, let's go into iconography. Bear in mind that there are sheer limitless numbers and variations and interpretations of these cards, so what I am presenting to you is only one of many different takes. I selected the aspects I speak about in accordance to how relevant they are for the cards used in the Persona games. The card usually shows either a naive, foolish traveler or a clown of sorts, either stumbling around in his surroundings or traveling in a fairly relaxed manner, seeming carefree and somewhat silly. The Rider-Waite deck shows a Fool of the Traveler variety, teetering at the edge of a cliff, holding a white rose, a symbol of purity, and accompanied by a little dog. There are many different ways to interpret this exact iconography here, but the Fool himself is usually interpreted to symbolize both naivety and a sense of natural wisdom. A person who is yet absolutely untainted by any life experiences and still has all possibilities in life open to them and is going out to experience it all. The bag of possessions he carries both signifies that he is on a journey and that he is going into said journey with only the bare essentials on him, meaning that everything that he will need on his journey he is going to pick up over the course of it. This is all reflected in the Persona series with the protagonists of Persona 3 and 4, all of which are at the beginning of a journey, in which previous experiences are of little relevance to them. In Persona 3's and Persona 4's case, this is because we barely know anything about the protagonists' lives from before the game, and in Aike's case, it's because her previous experiences and resolutions are barely helping her over the course of the answer, due to the loss and trauma she has had to deal with. In Elizabeth's case, she has only just started her journey and is going in empty-handed. And as for Sho, I'll need a whole different video to talk about Sho, so let's save him for now. Though the Fool on Persona's tarot cards lacks the white rose, the purity aspect of the card still plays into it, with how most of the wild cards are going into their journey untouched and, in a strange way, innocent. As for the little dog by the Fool's legs, there are two common interpretations that I have heard. The dog can either be seen as a faithful companion trying to warn the Fool of danger, such as the possibility of leaving the right path and stumbling down the pit right to his feet, or our little doggy friend here is actually a nuisance to the Fool, holding him back on his journey by pulling his clothes and legs and demanding attention, distracting him from what is essential. Both of these interpretations may be taken to have relevance to the Persona protagonists in form of their social links. Depending on how you approach the game's social link mechanics, the characters you meet may either offer you eye-opening experiences that bring you closer to understanding the game's plots, true themes and messages, or they are just annoying obligations the game forces onto you that are only there for you to make fun of them, gain some marginal advantages when fusing personas, and to distract you from leveling and driving the main plot on. Of course, all of this is based on the full illustrations of the Traveler variety, which, of course, are by far the most common. However, there is another variation still, the Harlequin. These variations of the card feature illustrations that look incredibly close to the Joker cards in modern playing card decks, which makes a lot of sense considering that the Fool and the Joker serve virtually the same function in a lot of games for which both common playing cards and tarot cards can be used. In fact, the reason the Fool is usually unnumbered is because the card was traditionally seen as a card separate from both the minor and the major arcana, much like how the Joker is usually seen as separate from all the other cards in the regular deck of playing cards. This makes the Fool the only of the 22 tarot trumps that has a direct equivalent in the more common playing card decks. By the way, this is also why Fool Arcana-aligned Persona users in the games are usually called wildcards. Get it? Joker, wildcard, because they are like the team's Joker. Or maybe it's because Philemon wanted to have his own equivalent of this guy. In fact, it's my own personal theory that the two Joker characters in the Persona 2 duology are actually Nyarlathotep's own version of the later wildcard users on Philemon's side. I don't see the fact that Jun and Sudo both have an Arcana other than the Fool as a contradiction to this theory, since Aegis, Sho and Elizabeth all were related to Arcana other than the Fool before gaining their wildcard abilities, and the protagonists themselves have shown affinities to Arcanas other than the Fool or the World or Universe Arcanas. This is also helped by how the theme song of Show Me Nazuki, a later wildcard who was first met serving a deity similar to Nyarlathotep in terms of purpose and motivation, is named the Joker, connecting the two terms Joker and wildcard unmistakably with each other even in canon. The more Joker-like illustration of the Fool Arcana actually makes an appearance in Persona 4 the Golden in form of the Chester Arcana, an alternate naming of the Fool, which is much closer in appearance to the Joker card than the more famous Fool illustrations. This version of the card is famously associated to Toru Adachi, one of the last couple of bosses in Persona 4, and Yu's less than morally sound counterpart, though I'd argue that retroactively the card can also be applied to aforementioned Junkurasu and Tatsuya Sudo by virtue of their Joker status. It makes sense if you think about it. The games repeatedly and correctly ascribe the Fool Arcana with a meaning of empty but endless possibilities, similar to how trump cards, especially the Fool and the Joker, are used to turn difficult situations around in card games, despite not having a clear value themselves. These cards can take a game into a whole new direction depending on how they are played. However, unlike the Fool variation, which shows a lot of the purity and naivety connoted symbolism of the Raider-weighted deck Fool, the Chester variation in the Persona games shows us a Joker, or, in the words of the Japanese original text, a clown, a seasoned artist who only fakes his naivety and foolishness to trick and entertain others, and who is actually an entirely different person once the makeup is off. Hence, in this variation of the card, the endless possibilities perhaps don't apply like they do with the regular version, since there are already settled motivations and emotions behind everything that Chester pretends to be doing naively. The purity aspect is simply not there. In a way, the wild cards can be seen as trump cards that have been played responsibly and fairly in the right way, while the Joker characters and Adachi are trump cards that have been played irresponsibly, driving the game off the wrong path for selfish, underlying motivations and trickery. In the later case, the endless possibilities have led to calamity, since there was no way for all the good possibilities to come true, since preconceptions and underlying motivations had already sealed these paths off for them. As referenced in Persona 2, the Fool Arcana is at the core probably the most human of the major arcana, symbolizing the basic archetype of humanity itself. The Fool is the protagonist of the human journey, with all the many different ways that it can lead. It can symbolize just about anyone. In this sense, it was probably one of the best choices Persona 3 made for the future of the series to associate this arcana with the protagonists of the games. Who knows, given that a huge deal has been made of the disparity between the civilian and the masked identities of the Persona 5 protagonist, maybe we'll see both the Fool and the Chester reflected in the character in one way or another.